We move on to another part of our program now, and this time also getting some insight into individuals and entrepreneurs in terms of looking for funding and support, specifically in terms of also understanding the roles that NPOs play, but also a unique opportunity that's provided to them in order to pitch their products to a panel of corporate donors as well as receive detailed feedback. Now, I'm told it's much like Dragon's Den, so I'm told it might be brutal, but maybe our judges will be nice to them here today. So in a moment, I'm going to introduce our judges. There'll be a lead judge who will be leading the conversation. Some of our entrepreneurs will join us on stage. Following that, we'll have an interesting interactive session where we hear more from the judges in terms of offering feedback to the organizations that will be represented. I'm going to start now by introducing our first judge, who is going to join us in just a moment to give us some insight and, of course, lead this conversation. But in the meantime, we are really keen to hear your feedback in terms of your thoughts so far on the conference. And you can do that by offering your feedback using the feedback form that's available on the app. By doing that as well, you'll be able to share some commentary with us in terms of the progress that's been made so far overall for today's convention. Now, I'm just going to quickly navigate our way to the app on my particular phone. This time around, because I do want us to double check who the leaders are on the leaderboard. Now, you might be well aware that not only are we handing out phenomenal awards to NPOs who have proven to perform successfully, but we are also offering you a unique prize. And you can win this all by participating in a quiz that we have on the platform that will allow you to interact, engage, and answer questions related to our exhibitors as well as the sponsors of this platform, and some key insight that you might have heard from today's conference. Now, you might recall earlier on we had a clear leader in the mark, and it seems as though he's getting some real competition, and many of you have come on board to participate in responding to that quiz. So as we take a look at our leaderboard, we have in third place Teresa Whitfield. Teresa's been holding her own in that third place position. She's been there for quite some time, but clearly picking up a few more points as they come along. Declan Williams, you were previously at number 1 as the leader here, but dropping down slightly to 188 points, still improving from where you were earlier this morning. And we have a new leader in the form of Bridget Harris. Bridget moved from second place, now in first position at 191. But looking at those numbers, it's a very tight race. Even some of you that are competing there, Julio Johnson, we see you, Deirdre Frieda, Natalie Frank. You guys are keen contenders as well and can easily pick up your points as well. Nelson the chatbot, how interesting. He's assisting us with our tech problems. He's also a contender there, listed as number 21. So Nelson, Mr. Chatbot, helping us with our tech problems. Maybe if you up your game in responding to a few of the questions, you just might end up in the top 3 as well. But that's just some encouragement for you to, of course, participate in sharing feedback on the leaderboard for the quiz. Keep doing that on social media as well. We do have additional spot prizes to give away for the interactions that we see on social media, and, of course, your responses to not only the polls, but ongoing conversations that we have here today. Now, I also want to take this time to remind you that given that we are at a virtual conference, there is one benefit though. Even though we miss the applause and the whistling from all of you when winners are announced, one thing that we do have though is the benefit of rewinding. And this is available to you. As a registered member of this particular conversation, you will be able to come back online and actually rewatch and review many of the conversations that have taken place over the course of the day, particularly in sessions that you might not have been able to attend, or if you had been present in a separate breakaway room. However, for the next 6 months, the content will be available online. I believe we might be ready to move on now to our Donors Den, the M&E edition, hearing from not only a number of tough competitors as to how it is that they as NPOs would like to solicit some support from corporates, but we're also going to get some critical feedback to these NPOs as to how best they need to navigate the landscape. Got a thumbs up in order for us to go ahead, so I'd like to take the liberty of introducing the judges who will make their way up on stage. The first NPO will also be joining us on board. We'll get confirmation of which NPO that is. They'll be joining the judges to share their feedback here at the podium in terms of their proposals and then face a tough grilling. But allow me to introduce on stage, ladies and gentlemen, our judges, led by Fatima Adam from Zenex Foundation, followed by Angie Maloka, MTN SA Foundation, and Charlene Lekay from Momentum Metropolitan Holdings. Our first NPO that will be joining them on stage as an organization to share their feedback with them is PYMA Monitoring and Evaluation for Social Impact. If our judges could make their way up onto the stage and our entrepreneurs and NPOs rather to the podium, we'll get the conversation started to hear some feedback. So a warm welcome to our judges who are making their way to stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thandazo Khumalo. I'm from PYMA, a non-profit organization operating in Freedom Park and El Dorado Park. We are an after-school NPO, and we also focus on youth education programs. We were using monitoring and evaluation since 2014, and our programs have actually improved a lot because we actually amalgamated a vast plethora of tools, both quantitative and also qualitative. In terms of the importance of M&E to our project, we made sure that at least we use it because we want to be accountable and also improve in our work as we report to the donors, and we also want to sort of like consolidate some and also showcase our progress in terms of the work that we actually do, and we also want to sort of like deepen our learning as well. And we do monitoring and evaluation because one, we want to sort of like monitor our outputs and also evaluate our outcomes as well as assess our impact. Then we also have sort of like a theory of change that we have been using to sort of like track our activities as well as our outcomes as well as our impact. So this has helped us to sort of like make sure that at least we are in the right track in terms of having all of our programs in place. And our theory of change actually links us back to the impact that we have actually that we had actually solved throughout 2014. In terms of how we have monitored our project, we have used key performance indicators, and we have also used an M&E tool. So the M&E tool actually comprises of sections related to the attendance of the beneficiaries as well as the academic performance of the beneficiaries actually on a quarterly basis. We also use the metric tracker as well as the alumni tracker that has helped us to sort of like track all of our alumni to actually find out where they are, whether they've actually managed to sort of like go into post-school opportunities. As I had stated, we also use a theory of change, and we even had to design an M&E log frame that has indicators and even assumptions that also help us to sort of like make sure that we are able to monitor our project. We also use some report cards that we collect from schools as well as the attendance registers, and we have even moved on to amalgamate observation tools that help us to sort of like observe how the project is actually being implemented actually on a weekly basis or on a quarterly basis. In terms of how we have actually evaluated our project, we have moved on to issues related to outcomes harvesting, and this has helped us to sort of like harvest all the outcomes that we see as the project progresses. For example, the academic improvement of all the learners, as well as the beneficiary assessment, as well as the stories of impact that we have actually managed to sort of like garner throughout 2014. We have also managed to use surveys in order to sort of like evaluate how the project has been, as well as contribution analysis, whether to sort of like find out whether our intervention has actually contributed to the outcomes or the impacts that we actually garnered as the project actually progressed. So in terms of contribution analysis, we had to ensure that we look at both the negatives as well as the positives of the project, and how we intend to actually use the insights that we have gained from M&E. We have ensured that at least it helps us to influence our organization strategy, and also on the other hand to sort of like make sure that at least we are able to sort of like see whether our project is performing very well, and even having to ensure that we advocate for additional resources, and even having to make sure that at least our staff pattern actually changes, and all the staff members actually engage in monitoring and evaluation, and even having to make sure that at least we are able to strengthen our fundraising proposals and also our concept notes, and having to also determine the quality of our services, as well as strengthening as well as assessing the strengths and the weaknesses of the project. So all of these intentions is what we have been doing, and we hope to continue doing as we go forward, as we actually implement the project into 2021. Then in terms of our project outcomes, this is, we had to make sure that at least we incorporate and we harvest many project outcomes related to increased academic performance of the learners since 2017, sorry, our matric pass rate has actually moved on to 80%, and all of our learners have even improved with a 5% academic improvement on a quarterly basis. And we have even moved to sort of like ensure that at least there is some awareness in terms of the careers that they would want to take, and we ended up having to make sure that at least we pair all the 40 learners, the high school learners with the mentors from Vodacom, Sasol, and also Deloitte. All of this goes back to our theory of change, and we had to ensure that at least there is increased literacy and numeracy levels of all the learners that actually progress to the next grade. Then in terms of improved beneficiary engagement, we had to make sure that at least by 2019, all the learners who come to who actually attend our project are 388. Although there was sort of like a bit of downsizing due to COVID-19, as we were not able to sort of like reach schools. Then in terms of our impact, we had to make sure that at least it guides us based on the theory of change. So we had to make sure that at least there is some increased access to post-school opportunities and participation in economic activities for all the alumni and for all the beneficiaries that go through our project. 42 learners have actually completed grade 12, and around 86% of learners had actually passed grade 12 through our intervention. And also, on the other hand, 55% of the learners have actually accessed tertiary, and 70% have moved on to placements like internships as well as employment. And we hope that at least as we continue to engage in monitoring and evaluation, all of our outcomes and all of our impacts will continue improving, and we also hope that all of our staff members will also gain more knowledge in terms of how they can continue utilizing all the tools that we have in our organization in terms of monitoring and evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mthandazo. I'm going to jump back up on stage and keep you in the hot seat over there as the judges are going to ask a few questions. Now, for the benefit of you who are watching us and joining us, we've officially started the segment called Donors Den, much like Dragon's Den, where we have a number of NPOs who will be sharing their insights in terms of the NPOs that they run, and most importantly, soliciting some support and feedback from our judges, who will also pose them with a few questions in terms of monitoring as well as evaluation. On stage, you've just heard from Mthandazo Khumalo. He is representing Phakamani Young Minds Academy, as you've just heard, and shared some insight with us as to how it is that they manage their operations. Mthandazo, we're going to keep you there for a moment. We know you're nervous, but no reason to be. Our judges are safely away from you, and I'll provide a buffer between you. But I am going to provide the judges with 2 minutes each to pose you with certain questions, and of course they'll give you feedback, following which we'll hear from the other 2 NPOs that will be presenting today. But here's where the catch is. Not everything is in the judges' hands. You at home have an opportunity to use our polling system to actually decide which of these 3 NPOs deserves rightful support and will be the winner of this particular Donors Den activity here for today. But I've taken up enough time. Let's actually hear from a first set of our judges. I'll give you 2 minutes to pose Mthandazo with a few of your questions.
Thank you, Mthandazo. And like Gugu said, no need to be anxious. We are very friendly. I could pick up that you have a good understanding of M&E and that you've been practicing it in your organization. But my question is, the partners that you work with, the schools, the volunteers from universities, the students themselves, those are the people that are your partners in gathering the information that you need to do your monitoring, or the evidence that you need to do your monitoring, and later on your evaluation. How do you get them to understand why you need that report card? And how do you get them to collaborate with you so that you get it in time and in the format that you require so that it works for you? Because you know why you need it, but your partner might not necessarily understand the value of that piece of information to you. That's my first question. Yes. Second question is, can you give us a practical example of how you have used M&E to better things in Phakamani Young Minds Academy? So a practical example, because I hear you saying constantly that you use it to better your organization and to better the implementation of the work that you do. So those are my questions. Thank you.
In terms of, I think I'll have to first of all answer the second question. In terms of having to better our organization, we had to make sure that at least we use monitoring and evaluation outcomes and impacts to write our fundraising proposals, and it has also even influenced our organization strategy. And it has also helped us even to know how to sort of like budget towards project implementation. And on the other hand, it has even helped us to sort of like assess the strengths as well as the weaknesses and the bottlenecks of the project, and hence improving our work. And also on the other hand, it has also helped us to sort of like make sure that at least we are able to sort of like offer recommendations, and even having to make sure that at least we are able to be accountable and to be responsible to the donors that we work with. Yeah. And then in terms of the first question, is it fine if you repeat it?
Yeah, okay. I can repeat it, sure.
Yeah.
So how do you get your partners, the schools, the volunteers, even the students that you work with, to understand the information that you need and why you need it, so that they give it to you in the format that you require to make the necessary assessments? Because you understand what you need. Yes. How do you make your partners understand what you need and why you need it?
So in terms of that, what we had to do is we actually engage with all the partners, for example, through some school activations that we conduct like on a quarterly basis. And also on the other hand, we have parents meetings, and these actually even help us to sort of like make sure that at least we're able to sort of like get maybe some report cards as well as some information that we need. For example, even with the parents meeting, we conduct even some surveys, and we actually explain to the parents how the surveys that we're actually conducting are going to help us in sort of like even improving the project, as well as making sure that we are able to sort of like continue impacting on the beneficiaries. Thank you.
Yes.
Charlene, I'm hoping so. Mthandazo, thank you so much. We actually have 5 minutes allocated for questions for the judges. However, I'm going to ask Angie if you could just ask a very brief one to Mthandazo, and Fatima will have to come back to you for a follow-up a little bit later in any further questions. Angie, your question?
Yes, thanks Mthandazo for a very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
And especially when you did your M&E framework and the impact it had on your programs. My question is, around March there was COVID.
Yes.
What happened to you, all this beautiful framework? That is the reality in developmental space.
Yeah,
to say how do you go back to your M&E and say, but this is the reality? How did you juggle that?
All right. Thank you so much for the interesting question, also thought-provoking. Actually, because of the fact that as an organization, we ensure that at least we always measure what we do. So even when we're under lockdown and we're under the COVID pandemic, we made sure that at least we are able to conduct monitoring and evaluation. For example, as we implemented our virtual school, we had to make sure that at least we also observe how the project is being implemented, and also how many learners actually attend online. So all of this information actually helps us to sort of like make sure that we also do quality programming. And also on the other hand, we had to make sure that at least we observe the number of participants that actually participate in the project, like on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. But then on the other hand, what actually changed is that we had to make sure that at least all the observations are done maybe on a weekly like maybe once in a week, because of the fact that we were not able to sort of like maybe attend or maybe look at or maybe check with the beneficiaries physically. But what I can say is that as we go forward, we hope that at least we can actually implement or maybe move to the digital processes when it comes to monitoring and evaluation. Yeah.
Fantastic. We'll have to leave it there for now, though, due to time limitations. Mthandazo, thank you so much for your presentation, sir. I must just give you a thumbs up. You've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the chat, from many of the delegates who are watching. So a job well done. Many quite impressed with the tools that you're using in terms of monitoring and evaluation. Thank you so much. Well, that was Mthandazo. Thank you. A round of applause. Our NPOs are so nervous. But as promised, our judges are actually quite polite and not very challenging or difficult at all. Well, we move on to our next NPO, who will also present their strategy. And this time around, the Association for the Physically Disabled in the Eastern Cape PE region. We're joined by Stanford Slabbert. Stanford, lovely to have you with us via Zoom in this new virtual world. The floor is all yours to give us some insight into your organization, following which the judges will come to you for questions.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone from the friendly city of Port Elizabeth. And a big thanks to Trilog for allowing us this wonderful opportunity. We are also known as APD NMB. We're an NPO and a PBO that employs 59 people at our Patterson Road premises in North End in Port Elizabeth. We were established in 1940 as a sheltered haven for disabled people. And the organization has evolved over the past years into a garment manufacturing concern that now competes in the open labor market. And some of our employees are pictured in the slide on screen now, and you'll see we have a very diverse team, some in wheelchairs, some on crutches, and some able-bodied. Our mission statement is to promote the advancement of people with disabilities, so as to enable them to attain their maximum level of independence and integration in the community, and to allow them to take their rightful place in society. This year, it's our 80th year of existence, serving the disabled community of Nelson Mandela Bay. We survived the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown by making over 50,000 face masks. And like most NPOs in the country, we are also experiencing the crippling financial crisis that has engulfed our country and also all the NPOs. Well, moving on to our second slide, as I said earlier, we're an NPO and a PBO. We can issue 18A certificates to donors. We are BBBEE level 1 accredited. We have 4 production lines where we have integrated our disabled workers with able-bodied in a very unique work environment. And we have 40 workers, including those with disabilities such as hearing impaired, physically challenged, and intellectual impairments. We own our own double-story building of 2,000 square meters in Patterson Road, but we also do need plenty of help with maintenance of our building. We're right alongside the freeway and not far from the ocean. Regarding corporate governance, we have an executive board that meet on a monthly basis. They have oversight over all our operations, and our executive director is Cecilia Fourie, who started as a seamstress right here at APD 20 years ago. Our 3 social workers, they service disabled people on a daily basis. And in fact, they usually assist 2,000 beneficiaries throughout the year. And they continued right throughout lockdown as well, despite very many challenges. Our biggest annual fundraiser is called Wheelchair Wednesday. It was postponed from August. It's on the go this month. And over the past 9 years, we've issued over 1,000 wheelchairs. And again, at the end of October, we'll be issuing another 200. That's to beneficiaries that are selected by our social workers. And that's through Port Elizabeth, Mthatha, Mkanda, and Jeffreys Bay. Well, moving on to our next slide, I'd like to tell you that we have an annual turnover of between 8 and 9 million. So our monthly budget is 550,000. And just those operational costs have to be covered via the invoicing from our AbilityWare sewing department. The only support we get from the DSD, the Department of Social Development, is a 200 Rand a month grant for 25 disabled workers. So we get 5,000 a month from them, but we have an operating cost of 550,000 per month. So it's a huge challenge. And we're competing out there in the open market, local and national manufacturers. We also offer branding and embroidery, screen printing, and sublimation options. Some of our major clients include TFG, Aspen Pharmaceuticals, Rehow, Dynamic Commodities. We're busy with 10,000 face masks for Casual Day 2020, and we service over 30 schools in the Nelson Mandela Bay area. We have a few other income streams through our Ability Charity Shop, our Ability Daycare Center, where we cater for disabled youths between 18 and 35. We also have our Wheelchair Repair Center, our Bus Seat Refurbishment Center. We do sensitization programs, accessibility studies, and job placement. We also know that we are the only NPO that pays its workers the national minimum wage and above. And that's certainly stretched our finances during this pandemic and the abnormal times that we find ourselves in. Well, moving on to the next slide, some info about this sewing skills development project that has got us into this position to be able to talk to you. And we had several long-term projects that were lined up before lockdown. We now need to get going. We have been talking to TFG, to TVET colleges, to East Cape Midlands College. In fact, they helped us go to Kenya. One of our reps went to Kenya to present to a conference that was in the end of last year. But the time is now right. We've got to get going. We've got to get our proposed workplace training project, which will result in forming co-ops after that. And one of the things that we did learn during the pandemic, that a lot of our elderly workforce, aged 50 to 63, they stayed at home because it was safer for them. A lot of them still remain on tours. But our learnership project will be including with local training institutions. It's going to include a lot of young blood that will come into our association. And we will be using or putting these young learners into our unique work environment. We'll mix the able-bodied and the disabled, and it'll be in the same work area. It'll be educational and motivational for these participants. And we'll be always striving to create a fully adaptive workplace which features both equal opportunity and respect for all. So based on our experiences over 2 years where we had the NID learnerships that were hosted on our premises, we had over 200 learners moving through. They were formally trained as well as did workplace training in our premises. We learned a lot from the youngsters that came through our premises. And in fact, one of the sadder aspects was that we learned that a lot of these youngsters, they get onto one learnership, and then as soon as that's finished, they're looking for another one, and then another one, and another one. And it depends, they choose the one that they'll get the highest stipend. A lot of the young ladies who were on the programs fell pregnant, and in fact, one girl had 2 babies in a year and a half. And when we tried to ascertain, why is she doing it? No, Mania, you get more, you can apply for a child grant. So she's getting a child grant plus a stipend, and that's not the way our youth should be approaching all these learnerships. And we want to now look at structuring something where we can take all that experience, and we cannot just have them jumping around from learnerships to learnerships. We have to give them a proper career path. Their road to nowhere goes nowhere. We must create a structured pathway for our students, and with regular monitoring and evaluation, with a big focus on life skills, life orientation, quality, and telling them all about productivity, to a lot of our youngsters nowadays. They don't understand productivity. So when we look at our workplace project, it's an annual cost, a monthly cost of 70,000. That includes their stipends and monitoring and machines and training costs and so on. Times that by 12, we're looking at 840 for the year to run it. And it'll be creating a defined pathway for each and every learner. 15 youth, so we'll be able to give them individual focus. 6 months on site with practical training and sewing skills, being on our production lines. 6 months on site business and life skills, and also doing projects in the sewing manufacturing side. And then 6 months off site, where we're really talking to the municipality to assist us find premises closer to where all our students will be coming from. And there will be 6 months of monitoring and support while they get going with their co-ops. You know, according to the government's white paper on persons with disability, 7% of government's tenders under the value of 30,000 should be going to persons with disability. We know that in the Eastern Cape, they battle to achieve 1%. So we can link up with all of these various entities such as CEDA, KUGA, the Department of Economic Development, and with the right support, with your support, we can uplift all these youth with disability. And when we move on to our final slide, I'd just like to highlight the cost. We've got the 840 for the learnerships. We also have another aspect that must go with it. We've heard so much about IT marketing that is so important. All these youths are going to be trained over the year. They'll be formed into co-ops. They're going to need to make, they need to promote, they need to market that stuff. So that'll all have to be done via social marketing, via websites. So we're going to need to upgrade our whole IT infrastructure here at APD. In fact, our server crashed the other day and we're battling without it. And that whole system, we believe, will be between 240 and 250. We've had quite a few quotes and we're looking how we tie the two up, and we've got to get moving with that one. And then the creation of entities, the co-ops, the youth groups working forward. We'll be out there looking for contracts and then sharing our work out amongst our own production lines and then into these co-ops. And they'll be working on site with us. We'll be monitoring them. We'll be identifying where the quality problems are, and then they'll move off site. We'll keep monitoring, and we'll be assisting them to source all these government work and their own work in the open labor market. Those setup costs and all the logistics will be 160. So the total anticipated project cost for this youth development scheme will be in the 1.25 million. So with all of that, we believe we can bring a plausible change to the disabled youth of Nelson Mandela Bay. And with that, all their families will benefit, will add to their local economy, and will be supporting the disabled community of Nelson Mandela Bay. We need your support. Thank you for listening. And we have lots of other needs, like we need materials for money. The fabric costs have gone through the roof. We need a transport vehicle for bringing our learners and our workers in and out from the work. You know, we're trying to keep our safety bubble so that we don't have our people riding on taxis and on buses. Lots of needs. We'd love to talk to any interested sponsors and donors. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Stanford. Appreciate your feedback. And of course, the judges will pose a few questions now. Just an update that in the chats, some delegates are really showing some appreciation and respect for your work, as well as the extensive amount of experience that your NPO does have. Fatima, we kept you quiet with the previous NPO. You can go ahead and fire your first question to Stanford.
I mean, maybe just to say, it's an excellent organization and it seems to have good oversight, finances. It has a comprehensive program. And it's innovative. So, congratulations. I just because this is an M&E sort of session. I wanted to understand, or if you can give me an example of one data set that you collect and how you use it to drive decisions in your organization.
One of the biggest factors we found is a lot of our workers and a lot of the youth that came through our learnerships have absolutely no idea what productivity is all about. and quality. And we've put in place a daily monitoring schedule. All our workers have been told exactly what they have: a target per hour and a target per day. And they are being made to focus on what they're doing all the time, every day. And we've identified that a lot of their training before they came to APD didn't touch on that at all. No longer can you just have workers arriving at a building, sitting around and doing nothing. We're paying minimum wage. We have to get our pound of flesh out of them, but at the same time, we need to look after them and we need to give them on-site training. So we have supervisors who are continually on the production line. We have a production meeting every day. We have a production meeting for the week ahead, and then we adjust targets. And at the same time, we were looking at how we can upgrade our IT systems here at APD, where we can actually put more technology into the workplace, onto our production floor, where we can then get tally counters going at our different machines and bring more technology into play. So at the moment, it's all done on sort of the antique method, or the older methods of sheets where they've got to tick off, they've got to mark down, they've got to get signed off by the supervisors. We collate all that, we put it into schedules, that goes to production meetings. So there's a lot to do, a lot that we can upgrade to, and with the right support, we'll get there.
Angie, have you got a question? Fatima, any follow-ups?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. My question is around consequence management as part of your monitoring, consequence management as part of your monitoring tool, but you've already touched on that. And I as somebody who comes from a technology company, my other question was going to be, looking at the processes, of your processes now, which aspects can you change them to a technology platform? Specifically, looking at all the sequences of the things that you do, different activities, especially let's hone in into the sewing one. Which aspects of that can you include technology? Have you thought of that?
Well, ideally, we want to get a sort of our production schedule, our production targets. We'd like to have a big TV screen up in the production room where people can see it. We'd like to acknowledge the counters we want to get counters going on the different machines at the different points on the line, because now we have 4 production lines. We have 4 areas of focus from our cutting table through to our pattern rooms. We want to also look at how we can scan in all our patterns, get that computerized. We want to use that to try and computerize our system where we are doing all our ratings to help us with the quoting side. But then on the production floor, I mean, we have a lot of our workers don't even have cell phones yet, or they have the old type. Ideally, we want to get them onto tablets at their workstations where they can then start tapping away what they're doing, get that computerized side of it. And then at the same time, we believe part of their skills training and their upgrading will be actual computer training for our workforce, so we can bring them up to speed. A lot of them have been left behind because of the lack of technology by a lot of our workers. So we can do that. We can change that and make them better people and bring them up to speed with the latest in technology. At the same time, it's a basic skill, sewing, but it's also a learned skill. So over time, we believe we can now start creating seamstresses that can get into co-ops, that can form into teams, that can then start identifying how the social media can help them and they can become more productive. And we'll formalize and get co-ops coming out of APD, monitored by us, and in the same sense, those disabled people who we'll be putting back into the communities, they'll start forming their own circles and they'll be able to tap into the schoolwork that'll be available from schools in the township areas around us. So we believe we have a model we'll start small. We don't want to rush it. We want to fine tune it as we go along. We'll be talking to the local TVET colleges, and we want to take that forward because disabled students and youngsters nowadays have got nowhere to go. And if they want to get into sewing and into manufacturing, we believe we can help them and we can make that big difference.
A good point to leave it off on, Stanford. Thank you so much for your presentation and interaction and responding to the questions from the judges. Also getting some positive feedback and further suggestions from many delegates on the chat. Even our very own Aska Biku mentioning that the real challenge with a project of this nature is creating awareness of it, as well as mainstreaming disability and its economic contribution. But we move on now to our third NPO that will be presented to the judges, as well as responding to some of the questions. Now, don't forget that after listening to all of these presentations, you as delegates need to vote in the poll for the NPO that you'd like to win. So I'm introducing the final NPO that will be joining us also via a Zoom link, Vola. Liam Smith, as a representative of Vola, will join us to give us some insight into the organization, as well as how best they operate as a NPO, prioritizing M&E. I'm hoping Liam is on the line and will join us soon. There you are, Liam. Great to see you. The floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this conference. And also, good afternoon to the judges. I'm a bit nervous, so yeah. I come from Vola, and essentially we are an NPO that is using our technological platform to enhance the impact, efficiency, and transparency of donor funding, to basically achieve our mission statement of solving unemployment by rewarding volunteering. So on the following slide, you can actually see how this process works. So next slide, please. Okay, so we essentially partner with donors, and we take their investment funding and we actually convert it into a tool known as Vola. Now, this Vola token obviously has monetary value as it's backed by the donor funding. And we use these Vola tokens by partnering with local organizations and local champions to run incentivized volunteering. So any individual who basically participates in these incentivized programs basically would earn a Vola after completing a certain objective. And these objectives are usually linked to the key performance indicators of the project in itself. So a good example of this would be, the operation of a neighborhood watch, an incentivized neighborhood watch, and the individual would then earn the Vola after participating in a patrol or completing training. What makes these Vola tokens quite cool or quite unique is that they are then used by the individuals at registered and vetted local small businesses, which essentially accepts payment in Vola for the transaction of any commodity or service. So this would be your local spaza store, any ECD center, maybe even your local plumber, and they receive the Vola, you receive the commodity or the service, and they can essentially cash out the Vola to receive the money that funded it in the first place. So measurement and evaluation is sort of built in because you can essentially see who earned the Vola, where they earned the Vola, and why they earned the Vola. And you can also see where the Vola ended up. Which local small business did you actually end up funding? So not only are you funding the project, but you're also funding local economic development. So just to sort of look at what that data looks like on the next slide. So we essentially launched our tool in the community of Kalmore in 2019. And we ran a 3-month pilot where we took donor funding and we essentially ran 3 miscellaneous projects. The first was the renovation of the graveyard, which was a municipal problem, which was made aware to us. And the second was essentially the running of a recycling project, where individuals would clean up the street, they would recycle the waste, and they would actually then turn that in for profit. So it was also sort of business generation and teaching the community about recycling and the importance of, a clean environment. And then there was also the operation of a soup kitchen. So Kalmore, the community itself, has a high unemployment rate, which fluctuates between 40 and 60%, as a result of their reliance on seasonal labor. And essentially, when Vola came into the scene, a lot of people actually participated, on an occasional basis, with 27 active and continuous volunteers. And we could actually see that, what was the age range of everybody that earned Vola. We actually found that most of them were a lot of them were quite young. Around 50% were, around the age of 25, 35. But we also had an age range of, 45 to 65, which we catered to. And we also found that a lot of the volunteers which actually participated in these projects and earned the Vola were actually women as well. And they used these Volas to essentially sustain their households as a form of supplementary income. The 3 dots that you see on the side, the red, yellow, and blue dots, those are also the 3 local merchants that we worked with. And you could actually see where people were spending their Volas on a monthly basis. So on average, we increased their revenue between 8,000 and 6,000 Rand monthly. And this actually helped them develop significantly. So the earning transaction and the flow of Vola in the community basically captures qualitative and quantitative data. And then just for a visual representation of the outcomes of these projects, you can see on the next slide, the renovation of the graveyards. Just after 3 months, the community got together and basically, reformed this dilapidated graveyard into something respectful. And this was a community-led initiative that most of the community members actually agreed need to happen. And as I mentioned earlier, it was also a municipal issue that the municipality was having difficulty solving. On the next slide, you can also see sort of the business development potential of the Vola system, of the Vola platform that we use, because the businessman in question, Uncle Stan, he actually started his business shortly after we introduced the Vola platform into the different organizations in the community. And within 3 months, he was able to expand his business and to actually grow out the availability of stock that he had, as well as open up another stall where he employed a post-matric learner. So yeah, that's basically it.
Nice one, DM. No need to be nervous. The judges will share a few of their questions with you now. Angie, I think we'll start with yourself to get some feedback. I'm happy to go with you first.
Cool. Thank you so much. And we can't climb through the screen, so you're safe. It was very interesting to me because that you use this technology platform for a very localized benefit, because we often think of digital as something that can go everywhere and that everybody can access from anywhere. So I'm quite keen to know whether you plan to expand this, maybe do this as a, I don't know if franchise model is the right word, but so that this benefit that you have created locally using technology can be felt by other communities. The second thing though I was wondering is, how do you manage the reputational risk of the quality of service not maybe being up to standard? Because you can measure, you said who earned what and where they spent it, but how do you assess whether the service was worthy of the Vola that you paid?
Oh no, excellent questions, thank you. Just to address your first question, we are actually in the process of franchising, and many other organizations operating in other communities have actually reached out to us to use our technological platform with great success. We launched our platform in KwaZulu-Natal with the help of Baldwin Foundation, and they were basically using our platform in a business development setting to actually improve the academic outcomes of the traineeships that they had. So that was actually quite successful. Like, we increased the attendance by 50%, and actually 100% of the class graduated, as opposed to the 50% drop-off that they experienced prior to using our platform. And some of the people not finishing, the training courses. And then we also launched in in the Umnoto community. It's a community that was essentially founded by community members. And they approached us to essentially launch our platform into their neighborhood watch. So that's an ongoing thing. And we're very into the idea of franchising. We would love to have our platform in the hands of every single organization, if possible. And then on your second question regarding the actual quality, like whether or not the actual vola was deserved, what we also do is we incentivize actual feedback. We incentivize photographic feedback. So the organizations, they get an incentive if they document the work that they're doing. So we actually have a gallery full of, like photos of what a street would look like before and after. They established like a rock garden in the community because that was also part of the whole beautification and renovation of the gravesite. And yeah, essentially that's how we ensure that there's quality. Obviously, it changes depending on the nature of the project. For example, if you're looking at a training course that's using Vola, we can then determine the quality of like your volunteering by actually looking at your academic performance. So like what quintile are you in? Did you score between 50 and 60%, 60 or 70%, 80 or 90%? So that's how deeply we go sometimes. I hope those answered your question.
Thanks for those questions there, Charlene. Fatima, any questions from your end? Go ahead, Angie.
Sorry.
Yes, thanks for a very interesting presentation. When I was going through the paperwork that we received from Trilog, I looked at Vola. I said, oh, it's actually dollar, but with a V. Yes.
Yeah.
And my question is around how do you mitigate the possible, we know with community projects, you'll have a tension to say, somebody will say, I've done it. And then when you use your own tools, that person has done it, but not to a certain extent, to the certain standard. So how do you negotiate that and mitigate such occurrences?
Yeah, so we've actually, fortunately, we've actually encountered sort of that experience before while operating in the community of Calmo. And what we actually find is that the organization that's using the tool set, they don't want to reward outcomes that are substandard or subpar to them. So, like it's actually managed by, the facilitators on the ground, and they have very clear criteria for what they actually incentivize and what they reward. And a lot of the time, it's actually been quite smooth, like there's been a couple of incidences, where people would show up and they would basically just lounge around. And what we found when that happened was that the actual volunteer group that is there to actually participate and to earn Vola, it's almost like a peer review or peer assessment. They would actually tell the person, like, look, you're wasting our time. You're not working as hard as us. Like, we don't think you should earn. And in that way, the community sort of almost regulates itself. So, yeah.
Liam, thank you so much for your response. I realize we might be under pressure, but we'll squeeze in one more question. I think we can, Fatima, very briefly.
So I was trying to think about, so there's some quantitative things that you collect, which are around Vola, which is sort of easy and it can happen. Have you got sort of measures for some of the qualitative dimensions that you talk about that will affect maybe the quality of the service and the quality of the outcomes and products, etc.?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think it was when I was answering the first question, one of the ways that we're trying to introduce, qualitative data sets is to actually request photographic evidence. So sort of like a before and after situation where we need to see that there was, clear and drastic change in the surroundings where you're working. Obviously, for something as, sort of abstract as community safety, the only qualitative data that we would actually get is if crime actually goes down over time. then we would be looking at, like regional statistics. But when it comes to, like your more tangible projects where it's beautification or recycling, we can actually measure based on photographic evidence or video evidence, which we also obviously incentivize.
Fantastic. Thank you for your response, Liam. The judges are happy with the questions. They don't have your fate in their hands, though. It is in the hands of the delegates. So to the delegates, we want to strongly encourage you to get voting. The poll is officially open, and we will be collating your feedback, I understand, over the next 3 minutes. Just double-checking my time. It's exactly 15:27. So at 15:30, we'll give you some impact and feedback regarding those numbers. We're monitoring the screens as they come in, so we will be following up as to who the winner of this particular level of support is. And you might be asking yourself, what kind of support will these NPOs be getting? Well, to give you some feedback and insight, in third place, the third place winner will be getting 10,000 Rand in terms of financial support. The runner-up will receive 15,000 Rand, and winner takes all with 25,000 Rand that they will have injected into their project. It's a tight race, so get voting at the polls. And of course, thank you for your feedback. As we are witnessing what's unfolding within the polls, and of course also collating some of your comments that have come through the chat service, really grateful as well for the comments that we've been seeing from Ascar and Kenneth. As we know, they were the judges in our previous competition. That was the MTN Awards for Social Change. They've really been providing some amazing insight for some of these NPOs to take away. But I'm keen to hear from you as judges very briefly. Naturally, when it comes to M&E, there's certain elements that do need to be taken into consideration for the NPOs. But top of mind, any additional feedback or lessons that can be implemented here? Fatima, you're keen to go.
Maybe I'll start with 3 sort of key advices. I mean, I think that one of the things that's happened is M&E is coming to the fray, and it's coming with an extensive amount of jargon. Now, we need to be careful about just using the jargon, and instead what I would say is open the box and see what's inside. So we don't go saying key performance measures and M&E and all of these jargonized things, outcomes measures, input measures, etc. Rather get to a simple sense of understanding what your project is about, what the assumptions are that's underpinning it, what the rationale is, what you want to deliver at the end. So you make it more livable for yourself. Because otherwise you're just going to have jargonized stuff in one corner and it's not going to be usable. The second thing about organizations is it's important to have a theory of change that you can easily articulate. So I heard it in the third instance, all right? It was a clear articulation of the theory of change. Can be done in a paragraph. You must be able to tell us about your organization in a paragraph, right? And that would give you your very highest level of theory of change. And then finally, a caution about collecting too much data. You don't want to collect data till the cows come home. Endless amounts, and you don't know what to do with them. Less is more, fewer is better. Think carefully about the few things, otherwise it overwhelms you and it basically extends your resources in your organization.
Clear pointers there and very important lessons to learn as well. I saw an earlier comment in the chat that said it's important as well to be very clear about what impact is versus M&E objectives for both NPOs and supporters. Exactly. Angie, let's get your feedback, then we'll come to you, Shani.
Yeah, mine is just a general comment to even the NPOs that are listening. As donors, we seem to overload organization with reporting because each organization, each donor has got their own template or framework. But my advice to NPOs is that nothing is stopping you to proactively ask for our reporting, like as MTN, to say what is your reporting like, so that you are not surprised when time for the reporting comes and you don't run around. You proactively know what you need to report on.
Makes a lot of sense. So be open to that engagement and ask some of the questions, that's, even if they seem simple to you, but they will be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Perfect. Charlene, your takeaways?
I'm just happy that I don't have to judge this, really. That we can just sit back and look at the scoreboard move. I think what I want to pick up with what Dr. said, that we jargonized M&E, and then we are afraid to customize M&E for our own circumstances and context. And I saw it coming through in one of the presentations, I don't think I'm allowed to say which one, beautifully, where you collect the data in the format that works for you and that works for the community. And don't be afraid of that, because it doesn't need to sit in an Excel spreadsheet. It needs to make sense to you. And that I think is something that we as organizations, or that NPOs can be a little bit bolder on. Take photos. There, I said it. Take photos if taking photos is what works for you.
Fantastic. I see many of our NPO participants taking notes and, of course, actively listening. So we have come to that time where we have to offer feedback on who some of those winners are. I'm not too sure if I need to wait for a thumbs up first or a voice in my ear just to give me a signal if we have collated the data and we are happy with the final results just yet. It's all the magic that happens in the background as many of you are voting and, of course, placing your votes in those particular elements. Of course, you've got 3 NPOs to select from: Paramani Young Minds Academy, Association for People with Disabilities in Nelson Mandela Bay, and Voila that we heard from. I'm looking at the smiling faces of Liam and Stanford on screen, and, of course, not forgetting our guest who's also joined us in studio, anxiously awaiting the results, and, of course, we'll be announcing the winners shortly. I'm still waiting for the thumbs up. So I tell you what, we're going to let you linger longer in your anxiety before we actually do announce the winner as the final numbers are being tallied up by the delegates. But of course, we strongly encourage you, if you haven't voted just yet as a delegate, do select the NPO that you would like to see win and receive their level of support. A reminder that everybody is a winner ultimately. In third place, they'll walk away with 10,000 Rand. In second place, they'll walk away with 15,000 Rand. And the winner will walk away with 25,000 Rand. I'm hearing the judges say it's tight. So if you're hearing them say that, you know what to do as a delegate. Clearly vote and, of course, make your mark to see the impact. But very briefly, I'll come back to the judges as well, just for one last comment. I am intrigued by the dynamism that's been shared, right, by the various sectors and approaches as well to these NPOs and how it is that they're implementing M&E in their strategies. I think COVID naturally has become one of those elements that has shocked M&E and its strategy and its rollout going forward. But sustainability, are these all projects that you believe can be sustainable in the long term?
I think some have greater difficulty than others, clearly. So I think the question becomes, are you intended or do you want to have sustainability? Because some projects just can't be. And if that's the case, then that's not your end desire. That's fine. But if it is, then you need to think slightly differently about how you design. And one of them seems to be more strongly sustainable than others, because it's actually a business venture.
Perfect. Makes a lot of sense. Angie, you wanted to add something there?
Yeah, I think for me, it's two aspects. Is the sustainability. You'll also look what is it that you want to achieve. Some interventions, you just need a once-off. And then the ripple effect impact on the next project that you want to do. But for me, especially with the COVID, what we have learned as an organization is that with COVID, you also need to be agile. And you need to build that risk into your framework to say, what if things don't happen the way you had planned? So that is my comment around the M&E framework. It's nice, you'll have all these things planned, but what if something happens and you are not able to do it?
Makes sense.
What is your plan B?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I see our guests listening attentively. We're about to put you out of your misery, but before I do that, let me remind you what's at stake here. This has been Donors Den, and it has been an opportunity for 3 various NPOs to present their projects to our judges, as well as US delegates here at this particular conference today, but most importantly, highlighting the areas of monitoring and evaluation and how it slots in to their initiatives. Of course, we've heard phenomenal feedback from the judges and many of you as well in the chat service who have been in support of these initiatives. So I think if there's anything that does need to be shared is the fact that there was a comment earlier that as NPOs, you shouldn't feel as though you've hit a glass ceiling, but really consider yourselves as change agents within the environment who are working with other stakeholders to really derive the kind of impact that you want to see in society. So regardless of the outcomes and how challenging the environment is, and of course, as mentioned by the judges, being very clear on what your objective is, its timeline, and of course, how M&E ties into it, do believe that you have the full support and recognition and support of many South Africans in corporate and in other spaces as well. So we've come to that time of the day where we're going to give you the feedback. The judges have offered their concerns and their comments. Charlene is breaking a sweat. It is hot here in studio, not only because of the lights, but of course because of the anxiety that's been shared. Mthandazo, Liam, and Stanford, representing your respective NPOs, the results are in and we're about to announce the winners. In third place, walking away with 10,000 Rand in support, is the Association for People with Disabilities in Nelson Mandela Bay. So Stanford, a hearty congratulations to you. Hopefully that 10,000 Rand will stretch far and wide, and of course, all the best with your initiatives going forward. I do see you trying to say something, so I'll use the tagline for 2020. You're on mute if you have anything to say.
Thank you very much to the judges, and a big congrats to the other 2 entities who are 1 and 2. But we're here in Nelson Mandela Bay, and we'll certainly be talking to donors who are keen to support those with disability. Thank you.
Makes sense. Congratulations, and a hearty well done from Liam there to you too, Stanford. So clearly it's between number 1 and number 2. I'll announce number 1, and by default you'll know who number 2 is. Or should I do it the other way around? Judges, hold my hand here. Other way around. Okay. And the runner-up in Donors Den for 2020 at the Trilogue Business in Society Conference, walking away with 15,000 Rand of financial support, is Phakamani Young Minds Academy. Congratulations to Phakamani Young Minds Academy in second place. And you know what that means? Liam, we saw your face, so do you know what that means? I think you need to tell us. How much did you get?
We just got 25,000. Thank you so much.
Exactly.
And congrats, Phakamani, as well. Incredible initiatives. Wow, thank you. I'm speechless.
You're speechless. The sun is coming through the window at your location and where you are. So a hearty congratulations to you. That's Vola. They won by 47%. And just to show you how tight it was, in second place at 38% was Phakamani Young Minds Academy. And third place, receiving the remainder of the votes, was the Association for People with Disabilities in Nelson Mandela Bay. But congratulations to Vola, walking away with 47% of the votes that have been tallied in. And of course, walking away with 25,000 Rand in financial support. Congratulations to all of our NPOs. We certainly wish you nothing but the best going forward. And of course, we hope that this financial contribution is something that can be extended in terms of your initiatives and the change that you hope to drive. But as has been highlighted by the judges, keep moving forward, keep to your focus. And of course, hopefully these are projects that are scalable and can be implemented in various other states and provinces within South Africa. So congratulations once more to Vola, as well as our other 2 NPOs, Phakamani Young Minds Academy and the Association for People with Disabilities. Liam, we'll leave you all smiles. We can see that you are soaking up the sunshine as well as the money that you've won. So congratulations once more. Thank you once more to the judges and for holding my hand with this. It's a tough one. I'm glad that we didn't have to make the decision, but it is everybody else who was at home. Now we're going to take a quick breather. I think after all that excitement, we need to stretch our legs, get something, some water to drink and refresh refresh our minds. And we'll be back in just a moment, just before 4 o'clock. We'll commence with the final part of today's program, as we'd like to extend our gratitude to you for participating in the Trilogue Summit for 2020. A reminder, please do provide us with feedback. That's available in the menu section as you make your way down to the feedback block. We look forward to hearing some of your recommendations and comments that you have to share with us. But for the moment, we'll see you at 4 o'clock after this brief tea break.